This is Milos Sarcev, and this is my 2019 Mr. Olympia analysis. As you guys know, I'm always asked for my opinion because I'm very opinionated. I have no problem expressing it. So I was doing a wrap-up after the prejudging of the finals, and I said a few things. But I want to really do the video with the correct analysis so you guys all know where I'm coming from. It's obviously very easy to give a compliment, but it's very hard to, hear the criticism. As Sean Ray once mentioned, right, I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not gonna just praise everybody. I would like to see you guys to see from my standpoint, how do I analyze bodybuilding contest? Would I want to be a judge? Yes and no. Yes, because I think that would be honest judge dissecting every aspect of bodybuilding and then giving my, honest judgment. And no, it is very, very hard. I have to say that Jim Mannion, Steve Weinberger, oh my God, those guys are such an experts. They had hundreds and hundreds of shows. They've seen thousands of bodybuilders. They can pick anyone, within glancing for 2 seconds. I cannot do this. You have 15, 16 Olympia competitors at the same time, top professionals, all earn their right to compete at that level, and they can dissect within like 10 seconds. As you guys know, when people step on that stage, they just, slightly turn around, immediately there is a first call out. Somebody has to make that first call out. Obviously, that's Steve Weinberger, and he does unbelievable job. I would say he and Jim Mannion are the biggest experts on this planet about judging the physiques. They consider every aspect of bodybuilding, and I'm going to discuss each and every one separately. But for what it's worth right now, I want to start this analysis. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people pissed off at me because they're not going to want to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to try to analyze everything and give you my reasons why I would put some guy ahead of somebody else. So let's start. Let's talk about bodybuilding judging and what you should consider when you judge somebody's physique. In my opinion, number one thing to judge would be a balance, which means there are no weaknesses, complete development, so we have no discrepancies in upper and lower body. A balance has to be achieved. At the professional level, especially at the Olympia stage, everybody should be balanced. Number two, we should consider shape. And what does it mean, having a good shape? Having aesthetics, good structure, X-frame, V-taper, round muscle bellies. So it's basically that cartoonish superhero character that we're all looking for. We know exactly what shape means. Shapely body, there should be shapely muscular body. Now third, or it could be second in whichever order, would be conditioning. Conditioning is so important, and I think that conditioning decided so many Mr. Olympias. 2019, that wasn't the case. But I talk about conditioning. What do I consider? I consider somebody achieving that super lean look, so devoid of all body fat, dryness, which means there is no subcutaneous water. Then there is a department of how much fullness, how much you are depleted, how much do you manipulate your glycogen and intracellular hydration. Muscle definition, polishment, so all these things are going into conditioning department. Number four, in my opinion, would be muscularity, and of course, by that you mean muscle size, but also, so important, muscle separation, tie-ins, muscle striations. So when you see somebody that is like super striated and muscular, you don't have to be an expert, everybody from the street is going to say, whoa, this is a kind of bodybuilding look we are expecting to see from Mr. Olympia champions. And finally, there is a presentation round, and that means muscle control, that each muscle at all time would be fully flexed. We see on the stage many times that guys contracting legs, and within 10 seconds they lose it. They drop their shoulders, they stick the stomach out. These kind of things have to be in control. You have to show the separation, you have to show your best angles. And then, of course, when you have your free posing, you have to emphasize your strengths, hide your weaknesses, have a perfect transitions, posing routine that makes sense. So when we look in a history of bodybuilding, and I do want to touch this subject, back in the day, we did have a symmetry round, which would emphasize shape and balance and aesthetics. And it's so important. I'm so disappointed that they took it away. Yeah, for a brief moment, they asked for front relax and side relax and rear relax pose, but this is not a round judged for shape and balance like it used to be. And I think we would have a big difference in placings if they would implement that old judging with the symmetry round being separate. Then we have a muscularity round where you're looking at the size and a conditioning, and many times all those most muscular awards were just given to the guys that won muscularity round. And finally, presentation and free posing. And it's also sad, for me to see that they took this away from actual judging, and there's no separate round for posing. Therefore, a lot of guys are not putting so much effort into creating some memorable routines. So posing is really a beauty. That's why people come to watch. They want to see that art in the movement, muscular body in a movement. They would present their best. So when we go back and analyze Mr. Olympia from 1960s, 65, right? Larry Scott won. And back in the day, there was not so much conditioning, but there was definitely shape, and judges knew what they were looking for. But right after Larry Scott, Sergio Oliva emerged, and Sergio was very, very muscular, so he was dominant. So now the judges were leading more towards the size. And here comes Arnold, who back in the day was really a freak, and by today's standards, of course, he wouldn't be, but back then he was overpowering everybody with that crazy width that he had, arms, chest, back. So for a while, in the 70s, of course, Arnold won 7 Olympia titles, and we had guys like Frank Zane, Serge Nubret, Franco Colombo, so smaller guys, but very aesthetically pleasing, and that was the look that everybody appreciated. Here comes the 80s, and Lee Haney emerged, and he is absolutely unbelievable bodybuilder. Many consider him the best of all time. He broke Arnold record back in the day, 8 Olympia titles, and retired, 31, 32 years old. If he continued, God knows how many titles he would have. But Lee Haney had that aesthetic freakiness about him. He still had that super small waist and just thick, round muscle about his chest, shoulders, back were, outstanding. So, of course, coming now into the 90s, Haney leaving, Dorian Yates, coming to compete, that wonder from England. They didn't know exactly what's going to happen because we have very, very prominent bodybuilders like Flex Wheeler, Sean Ray, Kevin, Cormier, that was really, really shapely, and every bodybuilder's dream, pretty much. If you're in bodybuilding, you have to appreciate their physiques. And most of us would say they are all uncrowned Mr. Olympias. But for a vacated title, which happens now, so many times. First vacated title, Dorian came and won in 1992. And he was not really freaky, but he was just enough, probably to edge Cameron Ronnie and Lila Brada. But 1993, everybody was expecting, Sultan of Symmetry, Flex Wheeler, to win hands down. Shape. Everybody talk about it. But here comes Dorian, and with this crazy muscle mass at the time, he pretty much confused the judges. They didn't know what to do. And he was too much muscle, strided muscle that could not be ignored. He didn't have really weaknesses, so balance was there. He had a crazy conditioning. So a lot of people agree with that judgment. I think, of course, I cannot deny that he was a rightful winner. But me considering shape and conditioning, aesthetics, I would probably even back then go with either Flex Wheeler or Sean Ray. So, in the 90s, there was all that confusion. Where are you going to go with the huge guys like Dorian, Nasser, Paul Gillette, Marcus Rule, or with the smaller like Sean Ray or Lee Priest and in between Kevin Levrone, right? But when you look at the judging score sheets, there were inconsistencies. There was big Dorian winning, small aesthetic Sean being second, and huge Nasser being third, and they really didn't have a clear definition of what they're looking for. All the way until 1998 now for next vacated title, when Flex again was favorite to win. Now Dorian retired, and finally Flex could have his spotlight. But what happened? Ronnie Coleman came out of nowhere and beat aesthetically pleasing, perfect structure, all that stuff, Flex Wheeler on what? On the conditioning. 1998, Ronnie Coleman won, set the new standard, and then of course all the eyes were at him. So 99 and all these years later, they were just looking if Ronnie's going to repeat his conditioning, is he going to come better? And he was coming bigger and bigger. I don't think necessarily better. I think the 1998 version of Ronnie was my absolute favorite, and possibly 2001 Mr. Arnold Classic. That's 98, and Ronnie keep winning and having a balance between him and Jay Cutler. Jay, who could match him with the size and the width. So there was still that size over conditioning, size over shape. So you have a brief 2008 blitzkrieg, what I say, Dexter Jackson, won on conditioning again. He beat Jay Cutler, on that crazy conditioning. But Jay Cutler regained the title. And judges started talking a little bit more about we need the shape, we need the aesthetics. Arnold was more vocal about in Arnold Classics, asking judges to award shape, to penalize guys with maybe distended bellies, not such a great V-taper. And of course we had a perfect answer with Phil Heath. Incredible shape and a perfect conditioning. So Phil Heath keep winning, and he keep beating big guys now. Kai Green, absolute monster, in great condition all the time. So structure and shape was beating the size. And then he was beating Big Ramy and Rolly Winkler. So there was that shape and conditioning that was winning the shows, which I salute. And what happened last year, 2018, me included, we're talking about, Phil was just not in his usual condition. He was very conditioned, but he set the standard so high that when he was slightly off, he left the room for somebody as aesthetically pleasing, as balanced, and a little bit better conditioned, Sean Roden, winning the show. So here we come to 2019. Sean Roden, unfortunately, was not allowed to compete, which I think is really travesty. He should have been allowed. And going into the show, everybody was favoring Brandon Curry because why? He, of course, has that best shape and structure, God-given body that everybody is aiming for. Freaky V-taper with a super small waist and wide lats. So he would be an easy pick, especially because earlier this year he beat everybody at Arnold Classic. At the Arnold Classic, there was actually very close between him and William Boniak. William was conditioned and big, muscular. Pretty much Brandon beat him on a shape and a balance. The balance that between upper and lower body, there was still shape and aesthetics going into the Brandon's favor. Rolly Winkler, all of us knew that he was a people's champ last year for a reason. He's a big aesthetic monster. Wide shoulders, wide back, knock out the body parts and poses side chest to side triceps, most muscular, lat spread. I mean, everybody was expecting that if Rolly brings it, he could be the one. And then, of course, nobody could ever discard Dexter Jackson. He is 49 years old, 29 times champion. I mean, he was my sentimental favorite. I also hoped that Dexter would show up at his best. But that wasn't the case. So this is a brief history going into the show. So let's see what happened on the stage.